cost of living and climate change are interconnected. One of the most underpinning elements of inflation, for example, is the cost of insurance. I don't know about everyone in the audience, but I almost fainted when I got my insurance bills this year. And that's because the insurance companies across the world are factoring in climate change. So we have to continue to address this as a long-term issue with renewable energy transition. And I absolutely agree that part of that from a cost of living point of view is household electrification, solar.
What is she talking about? I have no idea what she's even talking about.
And you're from the industry.
Because
so you ought to know.
Well, she's talking about her insurance, right? So, firstly, what is it that she's insuring? Because what are the main insurances people have? They have health insurance, car insurance, building contents insurance, life insurance. So, like, what out of those things are going to be affected by climate change? And also, if your house insurance policy is going up, like, climate change is going to take an awful long time for that to affect you. What is she talking about? I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And also, I won't say most, but it's standard practice that the insurance companies will take on a certain amount of risk and then they reinsure the risk. So if you've got a customer base of 100,000 customers that all have similar insurance, but you don't want to have some sort of black swan event that affects you, you can get reinsurance over the 100,000 as a block. So these reinsurance companies might have multiple blocks like that around the world. So they're often able to do that much more cost effectively. Again, what is she talking? I have no idea what she's talking about. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But they blame everything on climate change.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuel prices have gone up. Well, they haven't. They've gone down. But fuel prices have gone up. Oh, it's climate change.
Yeah.
We have bushfires. Nothing to do with us not backburning like we were supposed to. No, it was climate change.
You know what it reminds me of, and I don't agree with this stream of thinking, but you know when atheists, they attack Christians and say, it's the God of the gaps. Whenever there's something you can't explain, you say, well, it's the divinity of God and whatever. And I believe that. I believe that God, he is a divine being and they can't comprehend things. But it's got the idea of that God of the gaps is your answer to everything. With regards to climate change, everything relates to climate change. Everything. Why the dogs aren't, crapping more, or why this or that is happening. And it's like, it's all climate change's fault. It's like the devil. And therefore, we need to subsidise companies and give it to taxpayer money and kill our economy so that we can fund organisations that we have stocks in so that we can make money. And it's like whoa.
As Donald Trump would say.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bobby. I love my oil, Bobby.
Yeah, sorry, Bobby.
if
Bobby's not gone near the oil.
Actually held these views, sincerely held these views, like AOC saying that the world's going to end in 12 years and things like that. And look, whatever number you put on, 20 years, 30 years, whatever arbitrary number you want to put on this. If you sincerely believe that, you wouldn't switch to electric cars, would you? You wouldn't go and build solar farms and wind farms because the payback time, so the amount of time that it would take to save the amount of energy that was used to produce those items in the first place is about 25 to 30 years. So if you think genuinely that the world's going to end in 20 years or 25 years, you wouldn't do any of this. You certainly wouldn't be buying new cars. What you would do is you would restrict everybody and say you can't purchase anything. Just keep what you've got right now, even if it's a lead-based, fuel-heavy car from the 50s. Keep that, because that would cost the environment less than scrapping the car and building a new one. So clearly they're lying to us. Look, there is a future in renewable energy. I think most people, which is why I don't understand where the left is coming from on this, most people care about the planet. You don't sit down with Christian conservatives and the Christian conservatives go, I really want to see our planet perish. No, nobody does that, right? Christians want the country to look, and the world to look beautiful, to be clean, so they can leave something for their children, their grandchildren, etc. Everybody cares about this issue. This is not a left-right issue. And I think probably something I've learned from you is if you actually have a look at all of the core issues, there really isn't a difference between left and right anymore. There really isn't. What the main things that most of us care about, we all agree on. we all agree on. We can argue about what the right tax rate should be or, that sort of stuff. But there isn't really anybody on the other side of this issue when it comes to gender. There isn't anybody on the other side of the issue when it comes to looking after the planet. We're being realistic that we want to, we have to use oil and fossil fuels for a period of time, but we would like to be able to do things in a cleaner way. There's no counter argument to that I've heard with any sincerity from anybody. Even the oil companies are on board. What can they do? So I think that the good thing about populism is it really is an us versus them. And it's about us trying to take control back of the narrative, trying to take control back of our countries and our policies, and telling government, you better start responding to what we want. Because it's ridiculous if you've got people with disabilities in Victoria who have more in common with somebody who is a rural farmer who votes for the Nationals because they want the same thing. They want government to function properly but not be too heavily involved in their lives.
Yep.
Who these politicians are representing is basically nobody.
No, exactly. And can I just encourage everyone that people are watching these streams. The ABC's Q&A has 148,000 subscribers on their YouTube, and they got 1,500 viewers.
And they're not shadow banned.
And they're not shadow banned. In fact, if anything, they may have even be throwing money behind in advertising. Again, this organisation receives, the ABC receives $1 billion of taxpayers' money every year.
They could have given it to Kamala.
They could have given it to Kamala. Now, if you look at, and she could use it to actually pay off her debt. If you actually look at the $1 billion, isn't that nuts? If you look at our views across the platforms, we've got over 10,000 views on all the platforms once we finish this stream. But I need your help. If you're able to support us, we are going into an election next year. These streams are expensive to make sure we keep getting it out there. So please hit the link in the description. Man, I'm getting so congested right now. It's getting really hard to get this sentence out. Like and subscribe and support the show. That's what I'm trying to say. But if you like these shows, if you like Mondays with Shaq, heck, I could call it that. I'm happy to do these shows every time. Sometimes they are really boring shows, like actually uninteresting shows, and it's not even worth doing. But I'll keep an eye out on what the topics are each time and try and endeavour to do them each week. But yeah, this has been fun, man.
Well, you brought something up, and I'm sure that your audience will totally agree with me on this one, right? You're talking about citizen-initiated referendums. If you've got 10 times the viewers of the ABC, you reckon we should get the Australian taxpayer to give us $1 billion? I'll split it with you. Because I reckon there's going to be something for all of us.
I'll tell you what.
I reckon we would run. I honestly reckon. Like, I'm not a professional. You are. I reckon that people running podcasts and just, and not a professional setup like this. There's people that jump on YouTube on their phone in their kitchen, like Mark Dice. This is like on his phone in his kitchen, right? And he gets more viewers than CNN. So, these people run media much better. Yeah. And they give their audience the conversations their audience wants. Yeah.
And by the way, just to put in perspective again, I mentioned earlier, like with everything they put out, on the channel and everything, it'll probably be about 150 to 200,000 viewers. This podcast will get 1 million views. If I do all the clips that I usually do, if I have some time, in this next week, we can get 1 million views. And that's what's crazy about this whole thing. It's a friend of mine, Dougal Cameron, he actually said a while ago, he said, what do you mean it's $1 billion every year for the taxpayer? Here's a better idea. How about we have one YouTuber every hour on the ABC? You pay them each $1 million a year, and that's it. And you could do it. You could do a very high quality podcast with audience interaction and everything. It would do very well. But no, this is why the ABC is such a cesspit of leftism. It's because it wouldn't survive in the capitalistic sort of world like that. And so,
legacy media altogether is dying. But what's happening with the SBS these days? Does SBS still exist?
I think they also get $1 billion as well.
They get the same as the ABC, do they?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'll have to check that, but I do believe so. So yeah, man. And look, this is the thing. There's a case for it to be used to be in rural areas, but what's happening is in the inner cities, it's becoming a cesspit of crap, as we can see on this show. But anyway,
who's watching it in the inner cities? Like seriously, who's watching those shows?
just the activist class.
Exactly. We'll
Yeah,
get them
and
to
the politicians trying to get the vibe of the audience and where the electorate's at. But it's skewed. It's skewed. I can stack a audience full of people, of my audience, and a leftist can be made to feel like they're alone. I can do that, but it's not going to be helpful because it's going to be like this. I'm not going to be properly hearing from one side of the argument. That's why I don't do it. I know better than probably most people that, I don't want to be wrong a minute longer than I have to be. And if I have one eye covered, I will be wrong for a very long time. And I won't realize why I keep getting hit on the right side of my head.
I think it was quite big of Cenk Uygur to go on the PPD broadcast.
Oh, yeah. Huge respect. Honestly, mad respect.
A lot of respect for him. And look, he is a fighter. I don't agree with him politically. But he is a fighter. He's passionate about what he stands up for. And he's never been, to my knowledge, he's never been one to shy away from getting into an argument or going on stage when it's a hostile audience. So, yeah, I respect that. Absolutely respect that. But you're right. You don't want to have, especially when they're people who are not as confident, shall we say, as someone like Cenk Uygur.
Yes.
You don't want to have somebody who wants to present an idea and they're just being shut down. I've heard people that will say to me that they believe in an inheritance tax. Now, that is one of the taxes that I think is the most disgusting and horrible taxes that they can have as an inheritance tax. That's my personal view. But if somebody wanted to have a tax debate with me, I'd be very, very happy to do that. And I don't think that you should have an audience that's going to shut that person down. Let's have a proper conversation about it if it's an issue that people want to know about. You can't do that if you're only siding with your own side.
Yeah.
And I noticed that with the election is that there's been these meltdowns from, liberal media saying that they don't understand what went wrong.
Yeah.
Well, you're not paying attention. And then I've got friends in America that will say to me, oh, look, I'm not subscribing to this and I'm not watching that show anymore. I'm like, how can you be surprised then if you won't listen to anything that you don't agree with?
Yeah. Yeah, it's honestly nuts. Guys, I've got a few people saying in the comments some funny things. One person said SPS sold out years ago. One person wrote, I'd post a super chat if you actually read it. You can do a super chat where you pay some money, and that supports the show, so please do. They're putting mRNA jabs in your food. Okay, trying to get me banned on this platform, YouTube. Thanks. God loves you all, will save all. Hell concept, and the word is mistranslation based on 4 different words. Okay, all right, see. All right, come on, guys. You got to do better on these comments. I don't understand what you're saying.
Oh, the Instagram comments were fire.
They were fire, were they?
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, I want those Instagram people over on Rumble because they actually stay. The comments actually stay on Rumble, guys. One person said Medicare now is not paying for nothing. Enough many. Someone wrote blue beam. I don't know what that means. Public liberty under corporate laws. Yep. Someone had a cracker comment before where they said it was like a staged question.
I just want to address that thing about Medicare while you try to find that comment.
Yeah.
Again, this is something that I think pretty much all Australians, regardless of their political persuasion, agrees that healthcare costs are spiralling out of control and healthcare quality is declining. Right? Again, that's not a left-wing, right-wing issue. I can go to the most Labor, inner city places or Greens places, and I'm going to find people that are going to agree with me, and I can go to rural Australia, and the farmers are going to agree that this is a problem. Again, the overwhelming majority of Australians agree on this issue regardless of their political persuasion. Nothing's being done about it. And we need to do something about it.
Yeah, someone wrote, cue the planned question and then cue the planned response. And sometimes that happens. I mean, the question about money in politics, getting money in politics in Australia, that I very much felt like that was a planned question that was put in there, which I'd understand because they're bringing out legislation soon about that, and they see this show as setting the agenda for Canberra, believe it or not. And yeah.
You'd probably kind of have to vet the questions first anyway, wouldn't you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, certainly that the host knows the name of the person who's going to ask the question because they called him by name.
But what questions make it in?
Exactly. So they probably get the audience to say, okay, what questions do you want to ask? And then they go to that person. But to be fair, and I'll play devil's advocate here in defence of the ABC, of all things that I'm going to defend.
Yeah.
But what are they going to do on a show like that? Because you don't want them to ask some random question that's not really related to the topics that they wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Obviously. I think, I obviously think that more people need to be... engaging with the show. If they want the Q&A to be a bit more right-wing, then you need to engage with the show, show up to the shows. There have been some great ones in the past.
Shout out to Oscar.
Oscar?
The little kid.
Oh, the kid, yeah, the kid. That kid was brilliant. The school kid that was like...
I like that kid.
I reckon the internet is a wild place. Sometimes you'll find a bear behind a tree. And I was like, that was very wise.
I like that
and it was
kid.
poetic.
I would have preferred him to be just a little bit more
assertive,
aggressive, like I was when I was
12.
running around.
Saying, no, screw them. I'm definitely going to use... It's like, well, jail him. Jail him, Albo.
What I argued about when I was in high school, which, now that I'm 40, nobody cares. I don't care. But I still stand by what I said back when I was 14. Why is it that young people, when they work, have to pay taxes at the same marginal rates of tax as adults would pay, but yet they're allowed to be paid less than adults?
Yep.
When they jump on a flight, they've got to pay the adult fare, so when it comes time to them being paid, they get paid less, but when it gets time for them to pay, they've got to pay the full freight. How's that fair? Especially if they don't get given a vote. Now, okay, not a huge issue for most adults. Nobody's going to care about this. Big issue to me. So I wrote a huge thing about this, got it published in the school newsletter amongst over the protests of everybody who worked at the school, and then I sent it to the Sydney Morning Herald, and they never published it. They should have. Sydney Morning Herald.
We got a question. One person wrote, is it of note that the unions will not have limitations on their contributions to the ALP? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we mentioned this at the time. It is very much going to favour the Labor Party with the unions, and with the Liberal Party, they're going to have their own ways around contributions and dinners. You can pay $15,000 to have a dinner with Peter Dutton, for example, and it's counted as fundraising. Sort of thing.
What about the Chambers of Commerce and Business Councils and things like that? They presumably wouldn't have the limits. Yeah. But you know what? The thing with the unions, and look, this is clear when you have a look at the United States. Yeah. The unions are not necessarily anymore representing the views of the people who are members of the union. I mean, I don't think that every member of every union all thinks and feels the same way about every issue. That just wouldn't happen. Yeah. So I think that the power of the unions will diminish partially because of the success of the unions. Yep. Because as unions have created better working conditions, higher wages, etc., people are less reliant on the unions to stand up for them.
Yep.
Now, I don't want to see the unions disappear, but I do think we have to be very careful about making sure that unions don't have too much power to the point that it destroys businesses or hurts corporations. There has to be a balancing act, and that really applies across the board with everything, I think.
Rami? Were you going to ask her?
I was just going to say, how are they going to, if I have a kid and he wants to access his social media, and then I'll just open an account with my digital ID, how are they going to stop that?
But why would you need a digital ID anyway? You would just say you live in another country.
Right, yeah.
You just use a VPN and you live in another country, wouldn't you?
That's how they're going to ban the VPN, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Look,
okay, they banned the VPN, then you just use a remote desktop. Look, I'm a technophobe. I don't know what I'm talking about, but you use a virtual computer and host it in the cloud or whatever.
We got another question about the Q&A vetting questions that are too conservative / right-wing question mark. So they're asking me, do you really think they do that? Absolutely. I mean, during COVID, we saw a massive barrier to entry for a lot of questions, even questions I don't even know which will nuke this particular stream, but they did actually censor that, but they can't be really taken off TV. But also, I mean, I could think of a lot of questions off the top of my head which I don't think would pass their pub test. They'd opt for someone else with a more watered-down question. For example, I would get up and ask the question, why is it that the government is going after misinformation? It just appears to be a blatant attack and a revenge on people that voted no to The Voice. Why is it the government is trying to dictate to people and tell them what to think rather than, and look, maybe that might be like, oh, look, that's more of a statement. But it's clearly what's happened because Albo made the point after the election that he would have, had a much better of succeeding, but there was a lot of misinformation. That's what he said in his failure speech, concession speech. And so I don't know, I look at these things and I don't trust the ABC. They've got a lot of trust building to build again, and the ratings say that. It's not my opinion. The ratings say that. It used to be a great show.
It says, it speaks volumes that Albo would prefer to pass a misinformation bill rather than taking ownership and saying, you know what, we dropped the ball. We had the majority of people saying that they wanted to deal with this issue. We had broad-based support. We flitted it away, and it's my fault. I'm the Prime Minister. I'm the one that decided to do it this way, and it didn't work, and it's my fault. If he thinks there was too much misinformation, he could have gotten out there and campaigned a lot better. He could have gotten out there and actually, and so too could some of the Voice people, had gone out there and really explained what was going on. But the bottom line is, we didn't even know what it was going to look like because they said they'd legislate it later. I mean, Australians expressed deep concern. This could have been addressed.
Yep.
And it should have been addressed.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
And if I can just go back to John Howard again for a moment with the GST. Now, he was you're probably a little bit too young to remember all of this, but he had all sorts of difficulties, and Paul Keating was just smacking him around, and the Labor Party was smacking him around on, well, if I go to a bakery and I get a cake, is that the cream isn't going to have GST, but this is going to have it was a mess, right? But John Howard and Peter Costello, that's Tim Costello, that's the brother, they actually managed to convince the Australian electorate, and they got it passed, and they won the election, they got it passed. So, this is a failure of the Labor Party. And look, I have nothing against Albo as a person, right? I've never met the man. He might be a lovely man. I can't imagine it, but he might be a lovely man. Yep. But I do know people that have met him that have said that he's quite a nice bloke. I've got no question about that, but this was a failure of his. Don't take it out on Australians.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was going to say, we do have to wrap this stream up relatively soon, but a few more questions from people. That person that said, do you really think they're vetting these questions? They've actually come back. This is Cava1. There's no names in this. Cava1, they said, I know they do. I know they vet the questions and they don't let conservative right-wing questions through. They said, I sent in several questions and they were not used. So there you go. There you have it straight from the horse's mouth. Yep. She said the ABC, he said, it's probably a she, statistically speaking. The ABC should be divided into rural and regional news programs and urban news programs. The urban could run by paid subscription with only rural and regional subsidised by the Aussie taxpayer. That's actually a great idea.
Those shows like Four Corners, Landline. Is that the other one? The ABC does produce, or used to produce, actually some reasonable content. But my expectation, and maybe I'm just naive, but I really would have thought that the ABC should have been a politically neutral network, and it's not.
No,
I think that's what Australians object to the most.
It's very much not. Another person wrote, and I'll just fire through these quickly because there's a few more left. Please keep in mind all Q&A that can be viewed can also be used against policy topics, just like they used student input implementing VCE during COVID periods. One person wrote, reason for voting, ? The normies always choose poorly, and I'm fed up looking for policies that most parties don't even post on their site. Kind regards and God bless. Thank you for your $1 donation. And I read it out. You didn't think I was going to read it out, but I read it out. So thank you very much for your $1 donation. 94 more dollars, and I'll shoot you a map.
That point there that was made, I think that is a really salient point.
I hope you enjoyed that particular clip. Remember to like, subscribe, share this video, get it out there. We've got to break the echo chamber. But also, if you're trying to get a hold of me a little bit more directly, I have actually a whole membership group of people on Buy Me a Coffee. It's kind of a overrated eyebrow club that I've formed. You guys know how much I love eyebrows. If you click the link in my description or if you click the link in my bio, you will actually see a link to join the Buy Me a Coffee family that I'm building. I want to be able to share more with you guys as to what are my plans ahead of the election, what are my raw and uncensored predictions for the elections and the various bills going through the parliaments. But also, I want to hear from you guys. What are the big tools that you want to see to help you meander through the craziness that will be 2025? And what advice do you have for me? What do you think the biggest issues are? Some of the best projects I've come up with have been from your ideas. The how to vote cards, the LGBT book registry, the reparations calculator. These are all things that you guys, from chatting with you, have inspired in me to form and make. I just happen to have the means to do it. But I want to actually, be walking around with both eyes open as to what's going on in this country. And the best way to do that is through you. It's through family. And I think that's why they try to destroy the family unit in this country. If you want to join the club, click the link in my description, click the link in my bio, join the family. There's 3 different eyebrow tiers, bronze, silver, and gold. You don't have to go for the gold one. The bronze one is really good. We're going to be chatting monthly on a Zoom together. We're going to be chatting about what's going on in this country, and I'm going to be able to hear about what's going on in your lives, what you guys need, and where you see things going. And I can be a little bit more raw with you and let's just say swear a little bit more, which I really want to do. I'll see you guys later. God bless you. Thank you again for your support, and I'll see you in 2025.